Ah, there we go. Let's adjust the lights. How's everybody doing? Welcome back to Carpo's Thoughts. Guess I would say Carpo's World of Thoughts, but that's actually the name of my other channel, which was intended to be for things like this, but then ended up being for cannabis. Then it was about my school bus. Then it was about traveling. Then it was about plants and flowers and gardens. And now it's just kind of a whatever channel, just like this one is. And, you know, I just want to touch briefly on this idea, this thought, just because most of my videos are freestyle. They come off the top of my head. And most of the shit you see on the internet, on YouTube, elsewhere, people recite it and they know what they're going to say. I have nothing against that. But I feel like it doesn't allow for interjection of random ideas or spontaneous comments. And sometimes I say things maybe that come across wrong because they're off the top of my head, but I still find it to be far more rewarding than writing some shtick and sticking to it and having a teleprompter. The most I usually do on my videos, if anything, is I have a whiteboard, a dry erase board, or a notebook paper, and I will write down just talking points, like 4 or 5 words, something that comes across while I'm studying something so I don't forget. But then I have to expound on that. And because of that, I'm not always completely correct in what I say. I'm not always sure about the claims that I make, and I do come across wrong sometimes, and I'm okay with that. This is not just on the internet, this is in everything in my life, conversations I've had with people. I have a friend who, for example, is very thoughtful. My wife said the other day, she's like, "Oh, I admire how your friend says, he thinks about what he's going to say before he says it. I couldn't do that." And I said, "Neither could I. It just whatever comes off the top of my head is what I say." But and I hope that it coincides and somewhat makes sense. But I guess this video series, I feel like, and I'm calling it a series because I always feel cheesy when I start making a little series, then I just give up on it. I think, oh, what right do I have to make a series on this or that? This is more of the self-help type topic. So, as I said in the video the other day, this will be number 2, I guess. I talked about, there's so many different aspects to talk about, of being a human, and choosing a few is not always easy. And I talked about pride because pride is something that a lot of people seem to have. And somebody pointed out how weird it is that people have pride in, say, a football or basketball team that they have no, association with. It's something that I kind of left out of the conversation, and I did make a video on that about sports a while back, but we all have our own opinions on these things, on what really matters and what pride is. Pride in the sense of going along with guilt. And I guess this video would be more about coping. Guilt is something that we really should reserve for things that we've actually done that were wrong, that we know are wrong. We don't need guilt for just being alive. And this is why I've always been so opposed to the idea of original sin, or that humans should always have guilt built into them. I think that that's playing on people's natural tendency to feel guilty about things by saying that we're all born with guilt. I highly doubt this. I mean, kids don't feel guilt. Not until they get older and they're taught to care. And it doesn't mean that we don't have an inherent compassion for one another and altruism. It just means that the reality is that we learn most of our behaviors. And so guilt, it brings us down, I guess. And, in today's world, there's a lot of shit going on right now. And certain things that aren't even really worth talking about anymore, like the COVID situation, it is what it is. Some people think it's not a big deal. Others think it's a huge deal. Some people say they'll never wear a mask. Others always wear a mask. It's become this contentious point of political division. It's absolutely preposterous. I can't even get into that, except for the factor that a lot of you are dealing with the same thing that we are, for example. Parenting in a time of COVID means you have to teach your kids from home, remote learning from schools. So any of you who are parents, your situation may differ from mine, but I live in Washington State, and they've already declared that they're not opening schools. Now, I expected this. I told my wife back in February or March, I was like, this thing's going to keep coming. All the experts have said it'll last at least a year. So regardless of what you think, whether you believe it's manufactured or not, whether you think it's even a big deal or not, the real repercussions of society are happening because of it. So we have to deal with it. And as a parent, it's frustrating because you want to be able to send your kids off to school to have an education. But a part of you says, maybe this is an opportunity to teach my kids my own way. In other words, homeschooling is going to become a much more popular option in the years to come, I believe. And but it's very difficult as a parent. And I bring that up because we have guilt that we can't be the one to teach our kids, that we can't teach our kids what we think they need to know at home and let them go out into the world and be who they want to be. There's so much guilt related to parenting. Your kids grow up and they make one mistake, and some parents blame themselves for it. I just say the best you can do as a parent is just teach your kids, to the best of your ability, and realize you're not infallible, that you're just a human. And some of the other things, and when I talk about guilt, I'm going beyond religious guilt, this idea of original sin, because that's not really worth entering into the discussion. This is more about just in general, these feelings that we have. And they're not always about things we've done. I'd like to say sometimes guilt relates to things we have not done, such as, I wish I would have worked harder at this job, or I would have started this business, or pushed myself harder on this. You think, I could be, doing better financially, or I could be doing better spiritually, mentally, whatever it might be, if I had taken these steps. And you start feeling guilty about what you hadn't done in the past. And I'm here to tell you that's a complete waste of time. It's okay that the feelings come, but you have to push them out and say, now I can do it. Now I can step up. I've had my share of guilt, and it's rarely about anything I've done to anyone else except myself. It's my own guilt for saying, oh, I should have filed, this paper quicker, or gotten back to this person, or done this. And sometimes life makes you just want to back away and hide for a while, And I think we've all had that experience. I know there's a lot of gung-ho people out there who just take life by the horns and think that everyone has equal opportunity. I don't know. In a sense, it's interesting because I was thinking earlier about a person who grows up in an area. Somebody mentioned on a Twitter post or something, well, people, whoever committed this crime, they should have, people need to just be better educated. They need to go to school and get an education. And I was trying to explain how simplistic that makes it sound. That if you live in an area where you have poor resources, poor access to food, you can't afford good housing, where you have, a shitty neighborhood, it's hard to focus on schooling. But beyond that, some schools just aren't up to par. And everything is just so divided. So a lot of the parents feel guilt about how their children grow up, but at the same time don't realize that, do realize, but can't do anything about the fact that the school system is broken. The justice system is broken. And that can make us all feel depressed. It can all make us all feel anxious. And it's hard because I go back and forth on these things. One day I give a shit. The next day I just say, I'm out. I don't care. I'm never voting again. We're all a little wishy-washy in our, choices in life, if we're honest. And I mean that to say that we should be able to shift our ideas when we get new information. And so many people will not budge. And so it makes other people frustrated, and it becomes this ongoing battle. As much as I wanted this video to be about guilt, I know it's just kind of about humans in general, but being human is difficult. I can only say that as just this ridiculous statement that is so obvious. But I want people to realize there are some people out there in our society who complain constantly about their situation and their lot in life, how they didn't get what was fair, and that they're not getting their share, or they're not getting respected, whatever it may be. And I think everyone should realize that everybody's in that boat. There are very few people out there who truly have the arrogance to think that they know what's best for everyone and themselves. There are plenty of them, and they always shine through because they're the ones with the loudest voices and the most money. But the average person has no real interest in power or dominance or control. And maybe there's a sense of guilt for not wanting it. There's the old idea that there are no philosopher kings because no philosopher would want to be king. And I think that really resonates in today's world. We've come so far as a species, but far into what? What is progress? When we talk about GDP, when we talk about what we've done as a species to this planet and to each other, I believe that we totally miss the boat on what it means to be alive. And there's a certain lack of guilt about what we've done to each other and our planet because we're afraid to admit that we are flawed and we make mistakes. And even when we do admit we make mistakes, it must be some evil force, an entity, a demon, the devil. Nobody ever wants to admit that they just fucked up. And I think maybe that's what we're lacking sometimes. Anyhow, those are my thoughts on guilt and being a human. So I'm going to leave it at that because I could go on forever. But I have some other things I need to accomplish, I hope. Otherwise, I'll feel guilty about not getting shit done. Talk to y'all later. Peace.